My name is Roddiyatul Shuhada Binti Ahmad, and today I will present about the thesis determinant of economic growth in developed and developing economies focused to Thailand country.
Thailand is a fantastic success story in terms of development. In 2018, Thailand being the 8th largest economy in Asia with a GDP of 505 billion US dollar according to the World Bank. So during the boom years from 1960 to 1969, Thailand's economy expanded at an annual rate of 7.5%, and after the ASEAN financial crisis, it expanded at a rate of 5%. Next is problem statement. The tourism industry spent $5.744 billion in 2009 and $16.852 billion in 2019. During the same years, its GDP was 281.71 billion and 544.264 respectively. Study from Notapot in 2013 and Anotai and Surachai in 2014 proved that both tourism and economic growth are positive towards each other. However, a study from Farid, Nyor, Zulfikar, Shahzad and Wang in 2018 stated that there was a negative relationship between these two variables. So the goal of this research is to investigate the factors that actually affecting the economic growth in Thailand, and the objective focus on to analyze the relationship between the tax income and economic growth. The second one is to determine the relationship between the tourism sector and economic growth. The third one is to examine the relationship between incoming foreign direct investment (FDI) and economic growth. Next is to identify the relationship between labor productivity and economic growth. The last one is to study the relationship between consumer spending and economic growth. So the scope of this research is to concentrate on the primary objectives that influence the economic growth in Thailand. There are 5 independent variables that I have mentioned before. The limitation of this research is in terms of access to literature. Individual does not have access to a more comprehensive selection of scientific publications and factored to the process of collecting data. There are many articles that need to be paid before to get viewed, and however, I managed to find relevant resources, but it consumed time. The theoretical findings for this research, such as tax theory, classical Hertzke-Ohlin theory, international production theory, Phillips curve theory, and Keynes monetary theory. Based on this slide, the empirical findings has been stated above. There is a positive relationship between tax income and economic growth by Romero Avila in 2008 and Takuma and Ayuba 2014. There is a positive relationship between tourism sector and economic growth by Vigini P and Vici 2010. There is a positive relationship between FDI inflows and economic growth by Ose and Kim in 2020 and Soha and Mirza in 2020. There is a positive relationship between labor productivity and economic growth by Muhammad Mahmud in 2006, and the last one is there is a positive relationship between consumer spending and economic growth by Macaulay 2011. Next, we move to the theoretical framework. For the left side, it is the independent variables, and the right side is the dependent variables. There is a relationship between these two variables. There is 5 hypothesis development. For hypothesis alternative, there is significant relationship between independent variable and economic growth. For H hypothesis null, there is no significant relationship between independent variables and economic growth. Next, we move to the methodology. For economic growth, the process is gross domestic product. Tax income, the process is regulatory and compensatory tax. Tourism sector, the process expenditure per capita. Incoming foreign direct, the process is investment FDI net inflows. For labor productivity, the process is total labor force. And consumer spending, the process is supply and demand. Consumer personal expenditure. Moving to finding and analysis, I use eView software to run my time series data. In first diagnosis check, VIF procedure found that an NTLF has high volume and I drop it and rerun the task. However, there's still few variables receive score higher than 5 and I decide to drop consumer spending LNTNA. Based on the table above, it shows that the third VIF procedure, all the VIF score are less than 5. So I keep those three variables in mind and move to the second diagnostic check. So for the Bing-Watson, test which is 0.835639 does not fall within the range 1.5 to 2.5. Hence, I need to rerun correlation test. After run Bruch-Godfrey test, the Bing-Watson value is 1.45419 round off to 1.5, which is between 1.5 and 2.5. As the result, I have sufficient evidence to reject HNA and conclude that the error terms are not serially correlated at the second order. For the third diagnostic check, normality test, since the p-value of Jacobera is 0.005700, we do not have enough evidence to reject HNA because the p-value is less than 0.1. I may conclude that residuals are not normally distributed for the samples from this time series model. Next is multiple regression analysis. Based on the table above, tax income is significant, so I can reject HNA because I have enough evidence as the p-value is less than 0.05. Thus, the tax income has a relationship with economic growth. For FDI inflows, it is not significant because the p-value is more than 0.05. So I cannot reject HNA as I do not have enough evidence. So the last one is tourism sector and it is significant. I have enough evidence as the p-value is less than 0.05. Thus, the tourism sector has a relationship with economic growth. The value of adjusted R-square is 0.947286, which indicate a strong relationship. 94.73% of the variation in dependent variable can be explained by two of the independent variables that are TOI and LTE in the model. The remaining 5.27% is due to the absence of other significant independent variables. The p-value of F statistic is 0.000 and it is scored below than 0.1, which resulted to enough evidence to reject the HNA hypothesis. As a result, we can conclude that at least one of the independent variables and Thailand's economic growth has a significant relationship. Next is implication of the study. The first one is contribution to the researcher. It will help the researcher to have better understanding and serve as reference for study in providing clear proof and powerful prospective findings. The second one is contribution to the investor. It contributes information and boosts investment decision making, which have a significant effect on economic growth. Next is contribution to academic and finance students, as it contributes to give students reliable knowledge and understanding while also assist them to apply to their research. Last one is contribution to public, as they will be better informed about what may happen to academic growth. In a conclusion, I would say the hypothesis is accepted for two of the variables. Based on the findings, I have enough evidence to reject HNA, and there is significant relationship between at least one of the macroeconomic variables and economic growth in Thailand. The last part is recommendation. Prior to initiating the study, I believe it is prudent to ensure that the desired country's data is sufficient. Certain countries failed to provide updates on their country's state, making the researchers' job more difficult. The second recommendation is to separate the country into different categories and focus on one category for each research. As stated before, it is hard to relate one country with another if having countries in different conditions. So that's all from me. Thank you.